Letters a Father was never meant to read. When Daniel Morris came home, he thought the hardest part of his night would be unpacking his bag. He had no idea it would end with him on the floor of his daughter's room, phone in one hand, her fragile body in the other. And beside him, Kaiser, the shepherd who refused to move until help arrived. That night was only the beginning. Because days later, in the same quiet house, Kaiser tapped at a drawer. Inside, Daniel found letters. Words scribbled in pencil, sealed away for no one's eyes but a little girl's longing for her mother in heaven. This story is about more than one medical scare. It's about the pain children hide, the burdens fathers carry, and the unlikely guardian who bridged the silence between them. Stay with this story, because sometimes the truest heroes aren't human. The highway into Pine Hollow stretched like a ribbon of faded asphalt through the early November dusk. The last of the daylight clung stubbornly to the ridges, staining the sky in shades of ash blue and rust. Daniel Morris gripped the steering wheel loosely, his shoulders rolling with the rhythm of the road, though his body was taut with fatigue. A week away on assignment had left his eyes bloodshot and his jaw set in that familiar grind between duty and exhaustion. The black SUV hummed steadily beneath him, its engine a constant drone against the quiet of the Vermont countryside. On the passenger seat sat Kaiser, the 7-year-old German shepherd whose presence filled more silence than any human could. The dog had shifted only once in the last hour, curling his paws beneath him before settling with a sigh. The scar that ran along his left paw, earned during a drug bust 3 winters ago, gleamed faintly when the dashboard lights caught it. Daniel reached over absent-mindedly, scratching the thick fur behind Kaiser's ear. The dog leaned into the touch, eyes half-lidded, exhaling a sound somewhere between a grunt and a sigh. For a moment, the world outside the car, the barren fields, the skeletal branches of maples stripped bare by autumn winds, disappeared, and Daniel let the weight of that bond steady him. But it was fleeting. The heaviness always came back. The silence of the house waited for him just up ahead, and Daniel dreaded it more than he cared to admit. Pine Hollow was small, quieter than quiet. The kind of place where fog rolled in from the mountains every morning and clung to rooftops like a second skin. It was beautiful, yes, but beauty did not erase absence. 3 years since Leah's sudden death, and the house still carried her scent in faint pockets, the lavender candles she used to light in the evenings, the faint cinnamon on the throw pillows, the ghost of her humming while she cooked. Daniel both longed for and hated returning to it. He flexed his fingers against the wheel, as though loosening the ache in his knuckles would ease the deeper ache lodged in his chest. He had done this drive so many times before, but tonight it pressed differently against his ribs. He should have felt relief to be nearing home, to see Anna's small frame dart across the porch when she heard his car crunch on the gravel. But instead, unease slithered in, a dull, shapeless dread he couldn't quite name. Kaiser's ears flicked, as if sensing it. "You feel it too, don't you?" Daniel muttered, his voice low, rasped from too many cups of bad station coffee and too little rest. The dog gave no reply, only blinked, his amber eyes steady on the road ahead. Daniel found himself grateful for that silence. Words had lost their ease in his household. Only gestures carried weight now. The SUV rounded the final bend, and Pine Hollow revealed itself in fragments. The steeple of the whitewashed church, the rows of clapboard houses, the old general store with its neon open sign humming faintly against the gloom. Daniel slowed as he turned onto his gravel driveway, the crunch beneath the tires loud in the twilight. The porch light was on, its amber glow spilling across the wooden slats, a small sign of routine. Maybe forgetfulness. Either way, it hit Daniel square in the chest. Life had kept moving without him. He cut the engine. For a long moment he just sat there, hands slack on the wheel, listening to the tick of cooling metal. The November air pressed against the windows, damp and sharp. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the stiffness of nights spent on cots and in patrol cars. Kaiser rose and stretched, his nails clicking faintly against the plastic mat of the seat, before turning expectantly toward the door. "All right, buddy," Daniel murmured, reaching for the duffel bag in the back seat. "Let's go home." When his boots hit the frozen grass, a puff of white vapor left his mouth. The night smelled faintly of wood smoke, drifting from distant chimneys, mingling with the metallic edge of frost. He hefted the duffel over one shoulder and adjusted the collar of his fleece-lined jacket against the bite of the air. Kaiser leapt down, landing solidly, tail giving a slow wag before he fell into step at Daniel's side. The porch boards groaned under their combined weight. Daniel's eyes traced the faint cracks in the paint of the deep blue front door, the familiar scratch marks at the bottom, remnants of Kaiser's younger years when he used to paw impatiently for entry. The sight drew the smallest flicker of warmth across Daniel's face. It was the sort of detail that meant a place belonged to you, no matter how weathered. Still, he paused in the doorway. He adjusted the strap of the bag again, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No muffled cartoon voices drifting down from upstairs. No off-key humming that Anna often sang when she thought no one was listening. Only silence. He frowned. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon, as though someone had lit a candle hours ago and forgotten it. Beneath it was something else, something warmer, like toast, or the lingering char of a microwave meal. Anna's way of making the house cozy. It should have been comforting, but instead the back of Daniel's neck prickled. The silence pressed harder, like the air was holding its breath. Kaiser padded 2 steps into the hallway, then stopped dead. His body stiffened, tail lowering. His ears pricked forward, and the fur along his spine bristled like a storm cloud gathering. A low growl began deep in his chest, soft, guttural, steady. Daniel froze. Kaiser was disciplined to his bones. Retired or not, the dog never reacted without cause. He never growled unless there was something worth warning against. Daniel's hand twitched instinctively toward his hip before he remembered. No sidearm tonight, just the hollow habit of reaching. The growl deepened. Kaiser's eyes fixed on the staircase, rigid, unblinking. Daniel's pulse kicked hard against his throat. The silence of the house was no longer just silence. It was the kind that announced something was wrong. The porch light glowed a tired amber, casting long shadows across the siding of the Morris home. To anyone walking past, it might have looked ordinary, the kind of welcome light left burning for someone expected back. But to Daniel, standing at the threshold with Kaiser pressed against his leg, it felt less like welcome and more like a question. He opened the door, hinges creaking softly in the stillness. Warmth drifted out. Cinnamon, faint and sweet, mixed with something sharper, like burnt toast. Anna's touch. She always tried to make the house smell cozy, even if it meant leaving candles running too long or overcooking whatever she found in the pantry. The scent tugged at Daniel's heart, a reminder of her stubborn little rituals to fill the void her mother had left. But the silence behind it made the air heavy. No cartoons bouncing through the living room. No scattered notes from Anna's piano practice. No off-key humming as she colored at the dining table. Nothing. Just the faint tick of the wall clock and the hum of the heater forcing warm air into a house that felt too still. Daniel set his duffel down near the entry, ears straining. He called out once, tentative. "Anna?" His voice carried down the hallway, bounced against walls hung with photographs that hadn't been moved in years, then vanished into the silence. Kaiser stepped forward, nails clicking softly against the hardwood, but then stopped, dead still. His body lowered slightly, tail rigid. A shiver rippled through his coat as every muscle tightened. Daniel's eyes snapped to him instantly. "What is it, boy?" The shepherd's ears pricked forward, nose lifting as he drew in the air. Then it came, that sound Daniel hadn't heard in months. A low, guttural growl, buried deep in the chest, more vibration than noise. It wasn't aggressive, it was warning. Daniel's heart stuttered. Kaiser never growled at shadows. This was a dog trained in precision, retired but not broken of habit. He did not bluff. The growl deepened, steady, until the very walls seemed to hum with it. Then, as if something snapped inside him, Kaiser lunged. His paws skidded briefly on the polished floor, claws scraping against wood as he launched himself toward the staircase. The sudden burst of motion made Daniel's pulse spike. "Kaiser!" he barked, but the shepherd was already gone, muscles coiled, barreling up the steps with the sharp rhythm of nails clicking like gunfire in the silence. His body moved like it had on duty, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't seen the dog break formation in years, not even during raids when chaos filled the air. Kaiser never moved without command. But now, in the quiet of their home, he was moving with urgency Daniel could feel in his bones. He was chasing something Daniel could not yet see. The house, once so familiar, suddenly felt alien. The photographs on the wall, the family portrait from Anna's kindergarten, Leah's smile frozen in time, the framed commendation Daniel had never bothered to dust. All blurred past as he sprinted after the dog. His boots pounded the stairs, each step echoing far too loud in the hollow quiet. His breath caught halfway up, not from exertion but from the rising panic clawing at his throat. Every instinct screamed at him that something was wrong. The silence was no longer empty, it was suffocating. Halfway up he called again, louder this time, desperation cutting through the rasp of his voice. "Anna!" No answer. The only reply was Kaiser's bark, a sharp, singular burst that split the house open like a crack of thunder. Not noise, not habit, alarm. Daniel's vision tunneled, his world narrowing to that sound and the shadow of the hallway above. His hand twitched at his hip again, instinctively reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there. Old habits, older fears. He cursed under his breath and forced his legs faster, lungs burning as he closed the gap. At the top landing, pale grey light spilled through the frosted window, painting the corridor in an otherworldly haze. Kaiser stood rigid at the far end, in front of Anna's bedroom door. His ears were pinned back, his body a wall of tense muscle, blocking the threshold. His growl had transformed into a staccato rhythm of barks, sharp, frantic, the kind that reached into Daniel's chest and squeezed. For a fraction of a second, Daniel froze, caught between the man who had seen too much and the father who could never see enough. The air was colder here, heavier. He could hear the faint creak of the floorboards beneath his boots, the hammering in his own chest, the ragged breaths spilling from his lungs. But nothing else. No child's laugh. No cry. "Kaiser!" His voice cracked. "Move!" But Kaiser didn't move. He barked again, then glanced back at Daniel with eyes that carried the urgency of a language beyond words. They weren't asking. They were commanding. Daniel's hand trembled on the doorknob. He knew, before he even opened it, that the silence on the other side was not the safe kind, not the quiet of bedtime stories or Sunday mornings. It was the quiet that screamed of something broken, something wrong. And as the knob turned beneath his palm, as the door creaked open into the grey light spilling across the floor, Daniel Morris felt his world tilt on its axis. Kaiser's body blocked the doorway, every muscle taut, tail stiff, his bark ricocheting down the narrow hallway like gunfire. The sound was desperate, commanding, a voice from instincts sharpened over years of training, and Daniel felt each reverberation in his ribs. He shoved past the last few feet, boots slamming against the floorboards, and dropped his hand to the doorknob. The knob turned with resistance, then gave. The door swung open, and the world constricted into one small, devastating frame. Anna. She was crumpled on the hardwood floor just beyond the edge of her bed, her unicorn print pajama top clinging to her back, soaked through with sweat. Her small body was curled loosely on its side, arms bent awkwardly beneath her, as if she had tried to brace herself against the fall but failed. Her lips were tinged a faint, bluish gray, and a thin line of saliva shimmered at the corner of her mouth. For a heartbeat, Daniel could not move. His brain refused to stitch the image together. It was as though he had stepped into a nightmare, one so grotesquely vivid that it felt real only when his chest constricted with the force of panic. Then instinct detonated. "Anna!" His voice cracked as he dropped to his knees beside her, calloused hands trembling as they reached for her wrist. He found it, a pulse, faint but there. Her chest lifted in shallow, stuttering breaths. Alive. The relief was a knife edge. Daniel's fingers fumbled with his phone, nearly dropping it as he punched 911. His voice spilled out hoarse, urgent. "This is Officer Daniel Morris, badge 3071. My daughter, 8 years old, collapsed, unconscious, history of seizures. I need an ambulance to 114 Maple Ridge Road, now." "Help is on the way," the dispatcher's voice replied, calm and clipped. "Is she breathing?" "Yes," he rasped, eyes locked on the fragile rise and fall of Anna's chest. "Shallow, but yes. Stay on the line." "I can't," he snapped. "I need both hands." He dropped the phone onto the rug, the voice still buzzing faintly from its speaker, and slid his arms beneath his daughter, cradling her against his chest. "Anna, baby girl," he whispered, his voice breaking, brushing damp strands of hair from her forehead. "Daddy's here. I've got you." Kaiser pressed close, lowering his massive frame until his muzzle nudged against Anna's limp hand. He let out a whine, soft and piercing, then licked her palm once, twice, as though trying to summon her back. His amber eyes never left her face, unblinking, sharp with a grief Daniel had only ever seen mirrored in the eyes of men who had lost too much. The room smelled of lavender. The stub of a candle burned down on her nightstand, and the faint sourness of sweat. A sketchbook lay open on the floor near her head, colored pencils scattered like dropped confessions. On the page, half-finished in shaky crayon lines, was a drawing of Kaiser and Anna beneath a tree, holding hands beneath a smiling sun. The sight hit Daniel like a punch, cruel in its innocence. "Not like this," he whispered, his words quivering into the stillness. "Not again." He remembered Leah's last morning, the phone call, the paramedics, the helplessness, the funeral where Anna had clutched Kaiser so tightly the dog hadn't moved for hours. The vow Daniel had made to protect her from every shadow, every danger. And now here he was, holding her fragile body, as that vow cracked like thin ice beneath his knees. From the corner of the room came the faint rush of air through the vent, the hum of the heater working against the November cold. Ordinary sounds, brutally ordinary, mocking the chaos clawing through his chest. He rocked Anna slightly, murmuring her name again and again, like repetition itself might tether her back to him. Anna, stay with me. Stay with me. His voice grew raw, stripped of the authority it carried on the radio, reduced to nothing but a father's plea. Kaiser whined louder, pawing gently at her arm, then stilled, head pressing against her side, as though anchoring her in place. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, threading through the fog outside, growing closer, clearer. Relief washed over Daniel, but it was jagged, laced with the terror of every second stretching too long. He tilted his head toward Kaiser, his voice ragged. You knew. You knew before I did. His eyes burned as he watched his partner, turned guardian, settle into a silent vigil, body coiled protectively around Anna, as though daring the world to try again. Daniel pressed his cheek against his daughter's damp hair, his arms tightening around her. The silence of the house was gone now, shattered by bark and sirens and his own racing heart. But what terrified him most was the thought that if he'd come home tomorrow instead of tonight, if Kaiser hadn't broken his perfect discipline, hadn't growled, hadn't barked, Anna might have slipped away into that silence forever. And that realization would haunt him for the rest of his life. The night split open with sirens. Red and blue lights pulsed against the quiet houses of Pine Hollow, flashing through bare trees, scattering across frosted lawns like frantic brushstrokes. Inside the ambulance, Daniel Morris sat, hunched forward, arms wrapped around his daughter's small frame, as if sheer will might keep her tethered to him. Anna lay on the stretcher, her unicorn pajama top clinging damp to her skin, her chest rising in a shallow, uneven rhythm beneath the thin blanket the paramedics had thrown over her. Electrodes dotted her forehead, wires trailing to a monitor that beeped steadily, indifferent to the storm inside Daniel's chest. Every sound, the siren wail, the clipped orders of the EMTs, the hiss of oxygen, seemed distant, muffled, as though he were underwater. All he truly heard was silence. Leah's silence. 3 years ago, another call, another ambulance. He had gripped another pair of cold hands that night. He had promised himself it would never happen again, not to Anna, not to the only piece of Leah he had left. And yet, here he was, trapped in déjà vu, watching the thin line of color drain from his daughter's face. He pressed his palm against Anna's hair, damp and clinging, his thumb brushing the curve of her ear the way Leah used to when Anna was a baby. She didn't stir. His throat tightened. I wasn't here. The thought cut deep, raw, undeniable. He had been 100 miles away on assignment, chasing shadows while his little girl collapsed in her room. He had traded her safety for duty, just like he always feared he would, and if not for Kaiser, Daniel's jaw clenched. The image of the German shepherd standing in that doorway, barking with frantic precision, replayed in his mind. Kaiser had never disobeyed a command in his life, and yet tonight he had broken every rule to save Anna. A dog had been there when Daniel wasn't. That truth burned hotter than the sirens outside. The paramedic closest to him, a young man with sandy hair and eyes shadowed by too many night shifts, leaned forward, checking Anna's vitals. Pulse is weak but stable, he said, voice loud over the siren's wail. She's holding. Daniel only nodded, unable to speak. His lips pressed against the crown of Anna's head, tasting salt and sweat, whispering words he wasn't sure she could hear. Stay with me, baby. Stay. Please. Through the narrow rear window, the flash of patrol lights followed. Daniel caught the silhouette of Kaiser in the back seat of Sergeant Malone's cruiser. The shepherd's body was rigid, ears pricked, nose pressed hard against the glass. Even from a distance, Daniel could feel the dog's refusal to let go. his chest constricted at the sight. "She's lucky you found her when you did," the paramedic said gently, jotting notes on a clipboard. Daniel let out a bitter laugh that never reached his eyes. "I didn't. He did." He nodded toward the following cruiser. "The dog." The paramedic glanced back, a flicker of surprise passing over his face. "Then you both saved her." "Both." The words snagged like barbed wire. Daniel wanted to believe it, but all he could hear was the echo of Leah's last breath and the vows he had whispered over her coffin. Promises broken in the worst way. Promises to keep Anna safe, to never let her see the inside of an ambulance again. The vehicle swayed as it sped down the two-lane road, tires hissing against slick pavement. The night outside was a blur of pines and frost, Vermont's November wrapping the world in cold indifference. Inside, the warmth of the oxygen line and the sterile scent of antiseptic couldn't erase the fear chilling Daniel's bones. His eyes stayed fixed on Anna's face. Her lashes fluttered once, then stilled. He counted every shallow rise of her chest, each one a fragile victory. He thought of the letters she had once scribbled to Santa Claus, asking not for toys, but for her mom back. He thought of how she had started sleeping with Kaiser pressed against her side every night since Leah died. He thought of how small she still looked in moments like this. 8 years old, but carrying a weight even adults could not bear. The guilt coiled tighter. "I should have been here. I should have known." Another voice inside him pushed back, sharp and merciless. "But you weren't. You never are." The sirens wailed louder as they approached the county hospital, the glow of floodlights bleeding into the cab of the ambulance. Daniel exhaled hard, realizing only then how shallowly he had been breathing. He brushed his thumb along Anna's temple, his whisper fierce, a command more than a plea. "You fight, Anna. Do you hear me? You don't stop. Not now." The monitor beeped steadily in response, each pulse a reminder that time hadn't run out. Not yet. Kaiser's silhouette vanished briefly as Malone's cruiser slowed behind them, then reappeared, the shepherd's head lifting, ears pinned forward like a soldier on post. Even separated by metal and glass, Kaiser's presence anchored Daniel in that fragile moment between despair and hope. The dog hadn't failed. Daniel clung to that fact like a lifeline. The ambulance jolted as it turned sharply into the hospital's emergency bay. Brakes squealed, doors flew open, and cold air rushed in, sharp and biting. Nurses and orderlies swarmed instantly, their voices a blur of commands. "BP's low. Get her on O2. Clear the way." Daniel moved with them, one hand never leaving Anna's small shoulder. He followed as they wheeled her inside, his chest aching with each squeak of the stretcher wheels against the linoleum. Behind him, faint but resolute, he heard it, the muffled bark of Kaiser breaking through the night, as if to remind them all. This fight wasn't over. And Daniel, swallowing the fire of guilt and fear, knew with absolute clarity, if his daughter survived, it would be because of the angel who walked on 4 legs and refused to let silence win. The ambulance doors banged open, and the night dissolved into a blur of fluorescent light and voices. Cold air gave way to a sterile heat that smelled of bleach and latex gloves. Nurses in pale blue scrubs descended instantly, their footsteps sharp against the linoleum as they wheeled Anna through the sliding doors of Williston County Medical Center. Daniel stayed beside her, one hand pressed to her blanket-covered shoulder, as if that single point of contact tethered them both to something solid. The gurney rattled beneath the weight of quick movement, its wheels squeaking with every turn down the bright, sterile corridor. 8-year-old female. History of epilepsy. The paramedic rattled off, his voice clipped, professional. Collapsed at home. Unresponsive, but breathing. Pulse weak, but present. Oxygen started in transit. The words sliced through the air like shards of glass, efficient and impersonal. Daniel hated them. Anna wasn't a case file. She was his little girl in unicorn pajamas, limp and sweat-soaked under 2 bright lights. They burst through double doors marked pediatric emergency. A dozen machines beeped in staggered rhythm, monitors flashing green and red. The scent of antiseptic burned the inside of Daniel's nose, and for a moment he felt like he was drowning. Not in water, but in noise and light, and the frantic pace of people who all seemed to know exactly what to do while he stood useless at their center. "Sir, we need you to step back," a nurse said firmly, guiding him toward the wall. Her tone was kind but immovable, like someone used to dealing with desperate parents who couldn't stop clutching their children. Daniel hesitated, his fingers tightening on Anna's shoulder until the nurse's hand pressed against his wrist, prying him gently but firmly away. He let go. It felt like surrendering her to strangers. Anna's stretcher was parked in the center of the room. Within seconds, a monitor was clipped to her finger, a blood pressure cuff inflated around her thin arm, and an oxygen mask fitted over her mouth and nose. Her chest rose and fell beneath the fog of condensation. Daniel's heart lurched at the sight, his daughter breathing because of a machine, not because of him. "Seizure activity prior to collapse?" another nurse asked. "Yes," Daniel rasped. His throat was raw. She's had seizures before, but not in almost a year. "Medication's been stable." "What's she prescribed?" The question snagged his brain. His mind scrambled through the weeks of pill bottles, half-filled schedules, the charts taped to the refrigerator. His tongue tripped over itself. Keppra. Twice daily, 500 milligrams. When was her last dose? Daniel blinked. He should know. He always knew. But he'd been gone for 7 days, away on assignment, relying on Karen to keep the schedule. Guilt sliced through him as he stammered, "This morning. No, yesterday. Yesterday morning." The nurse's pen scratched across her chart, face unreadable. Daniel's chest constricted tighter. Another voice cut in. "Any recent illness? Fever? Infection? Head trauma?" His lips parted, but no sound came. The room spun with questions he wasn't ready for, words he couldn't find. All he could do was stare at Anna's pale face behind the mask, the faint flutter of her lashes that never opened. "Sir?" The nurse pressed gently. Daniel shook his head, voice breaking. "No, nothing. She was fine. She was drawing. She was laughing. She was—" His words collapsed into silence. The beeping of the monitor filled the space instead, steady but fragile, each pulse a reminder of how little control he had. A doctor swept in, her lab coat flaring slightly with her stride. Petite, dark-haired, her presence was both brisk and grounding. Dr. Helena Ruiz, pediatric neurology. She introduced herself quickly, eyes already scanning the monitor. She pressed a stethoscope to Anna's chest, listening intently. "She's stable for now," Ruiz said, glancing briefly at Daniel. "But the seizure was strong. We'll run an EEG, adjust medication if necessary. First, let's get labs and fluids." Daniel nodded dumbly, relief and fear crashing together in his chest. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but his mouth refused to cooperate. The sensory overload pressed harder. The hiss of the oxygen, the squeal of the IV cartwheels, the antiseptic sting in the air. The sharp light reflecting off the steel tray of instruments. It all folded in, magnifying the helplessness that pinned him to the wall. He had spent 2 decades as a cop, had faced armed suspects in alleys and stared down men who wanted him dead, but he had never felt so utterly powerless as he did watching his daughter's chest rise and fall beneath hospital machinery. Through the glass window at the far end of the hallway, he caught a glimpse of red and blue lights still flickering outside. For a moment, his eyes locked on the silhouette of Malone's cruiser parked at the curb. Inside, Kaiser sat rigid, muzzle pressed to the window, ears forward, eyes unyielding. Even from here, Daniel could feel it. The dog's refusal to move, the same silent determination that had saved Anna minutes earlier. His throat tightened. If not for Kaiser, she might not even be here under the blaze of fluorescent light. The thought shook him to his core. "Dad?" The word was barely audible. Daniel's head snapped back toward the bed, breath catching in his throat. Anna's lips moved faintly beneath the mask, her voice muffled, but real. "Daddy." He stumbled forward, nearly tripping over the stool, before catching himself at her bedside. He gripped her small hand, careful of the IV needle, and bent close. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. She whispered again, voice rasping, "Kaiser." Daniel's chest cracked open. He brushed his thumb across her knuckles, tears stinging his eyes. "He's right outside," he whispered. "He's not going anywhere." The monitor beeped steadily, almost reassuringly now. Nurses adjusted wires, voices lowered, and Dr. Ruiz gave a small nod. "She's stable for the moment." "That's good." Daniel bowed his head, lips brushing his daughter's damp hair, inhaling the scent of antiseptic and sweat. He whispered against her ear, "You scared me half to death. Don't do that again." Her fingers twitched faintly against his palm, as if trying to hold him back. For the first time that night, Daniel let himself breathe. Not fully, not freely, but enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still time to put the pieces back together. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the pale glow of the monitor beside Anna's bed. Numbers pulsed in green, steady but fragile, like fireflies caught in glass. Outside, fog pressed against the windows, smearing the November night into a gray blur. Daniel sat stiffly in the vinyl chair, pulled close to the bed. His elbows rested on his knees, his hands folded tight, knuckles white against the weight of waiting. Every beep from the machines struck like a hammer against his nerves. Anna lay small and still beneath the blanket, her face drained of color, lashes dark crescents against her skin. He had faced standoffs in alleys, gun barrels leveled at his chest. He had sat through funerals with folded flags pressed into trembling hands. None of it compared to this. The helplessness of watching his daughter tethered to machines, her fate balanced on wires and monitors. The door opened softly. Dr. Helena Ruiz stepped inside, a clipboard tucked beneath her arm. She moved with the briskness of someone used to delivering hard truths, but tempered with a kind of quiet compassion. Her dark eyes flicked to Anna first, then to Daniel. He rose instantly, chair legs scraping against the tile. "How is she?" Ruiz approached the bed, scanning the monitor before speaking. Her voice was calm but firm, practiced in its steadiness. "She's stable for now. That's the good news. But—" She paused, choosing her words with care. "The seizure was strong. Longer than most, from what the paramedics reported. We've run her labs. Her medication levels aren't where they should be." Daniel frowned, his throat tightening. "She's been taking them. Karen makes sure, twice a day, every day." Ruiz gave a small nod, not dismissive, but measured. I'm not suggesting neglect. Children's bodies change as they grow. What worked 10 months ago may not be enough now. Her system isn't metabolizing the dose as effectively. The balance has shifted. Her words settled like stones in Daniel's gut. So you're saying, it's back. I'm saying her epilepsy has resurfaced in a way we need to address immediately. Ruiz's gaze was steady, her voice softening. She was very lucky tonight. If the seizure had lasted much longer without intervention, she let the silence finish the sentence. Daniel sank back into the chair, his body folding in on itself. His hands scrubbed over his face, dragging down the lines etched deeper by years of grief and worry. I thought we were past this, he whispered. 10 months without an incident. I thought she was safe. No one's ever passed epilepsy, Mr. Morris, Ruiz said gently. We manage it. We adjust as needed. Tonight is a reminder that we can't take stability for granted. The monitor beeped softly, steady as a heartbeat. Daniel's eyes fixed on it, the green line pulsing with every fragile breath his daughter drew. He felt Kaiser before he saw him, the weight of the shepherd pressing against his knee, warm and grounding. The dog had been let inside after the chaos settled, and now he sat at Daniel's side, eyes trained on Anna, unmoving. Daniel's fingers drifted to the coarse fur at his neck, clutching like a man holding onto a lifeline. She was drawing. Just yesterday, Daniel muttered, more to himself than anyone else. She was laughing. She said she felt fine. His voice cracked. I should have known. I should have seen it. Ruiz crouched slightly to meet his eye level, her expression free of judgment. Parents can't see everything. Even doctors don't see everything. What matters is that you brought her in, that she's here now. We'll adjust her dosage, monitor her closely, and run a longer EEG to see how her brain is firing during sleep. It will take time, but there are options. Options. The word felt flimsy, insubstantial against the fear clawing at him. And if it happens again? He asked, his voice low, raw. Then we face it again, Ruiz said. But we'll be better prepared. I promise you that. Daniel's chest rose and fell in a shudder. His hand stayed buried in Kaiser's fur, the steady rise of the dog's breathing syncing with his own. For a moment, he let himself lean into it, grounding himself in the living presence beside him, the one constant that had refused to let Anna slip away. Thank you, Doctor, he said finally, his voice hoarse. Ruiz gave a small nod, straightening. I'll check back in after her EEG results. In the meantime, try to rest. She'll need you steady. Rest. The word felt impossible. As the door clicked shut behind her, the silence of the room thickened again, broken only by the faint hiss of the oxygen and the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Daniel leaned back, his body sagging under the weight of relief and dread combined. His hand never left Kaiser's coat, his thumb stroking absently through fur. He looked at his daughter, pale beneath hospital lights, and whispered to the stillness, You are lucky this time, Anna, but I can't keep gambling with your life. The shepherd shifted, pressing closer, as if he too had heard the vow hidden in those words. The pediatric ward was quieter after midnight, but quiet in a hospital never felt like peace. It was the kind of silence that hummed with machines behind closed doors, with the shuffle of nurses' shoes on waxed floors, with the faint metallic scent of disinfectant that clung to the air like static. Daniel Morris sat alone in the waiting room, his body folded into one of the vinyl chairs lined against the wall. The light above him buzzed faintly, flickering every so often, throwing the shadows of the room into restless motion. He leaned forward, elbows braced on his knees, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles looked bone white. His head bowed, his short-cropped hair falling forward, as if even gravity had grown heavier. On the low table beside him lay a stack of outdated magazines, curled at the corners, untouched. Across the room, a vending machine glowed with offerings of soda and candy bars he couldn't imagine stomaching. He hadn't eaten since the morning, but hunger had long since been replaced by a hollow ache in his chest. Anna was 2 floors up, under fluorescent light, her small body wired to machines, and Daniel, once again, was left with nothing but memory. Leah's memory. It struck without warning, as it always did. A scent, a flicker of sound, or just silence heavy enough to let the past creep in. Tonight it came in the hum of the heater, too steady, too similar to the oxygen hiss that had filled the room 3 years ago. He closed his eyes, and the hospital around him dissolved. He was back in their bedroom on that terrible morning, the half-light of dawn slanting through blinds, Leah's gasp waking him. She had pressed a hand to her chest, eyes wide with something between shock and apology, and then she had collapsed. He had called 911 with hands that shook so violently he could barely punch the numbers. The paramedics had swarmed, voices clinical, urgent, but he had known, even before they told him, heart failure, sudden, unforgiving. The memory shifted. He saw the funeral, grey sky stretching wide over Pine Hollow's cemetery. Anna had stood so small in her black dress, clutching Kaiser's thick neck with both arms, her face buried in the shepherd's fur. Kaiser hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, as though he understood the child needed him more than air. Daniel had stood behind them, a folded flag heavy in his hands, its sharp creases cutting into his palms. His eyes had burned with tears he refused to shed, because he thought he needed to be the wall, the strong one, the protector. He had made his vow that day, whispered into the wind that rattled through the bare branches. I will keep her safe. I will never let her feel unguarded, not once, not ever. And tonight, sitting in a sterile waiting room while his daughter fought for breath in a hospital bed, that vow felt broken beyond repair. Daniel's chest heaved with a slow exhale, the sound trembling like something cracked inside him. His hands unclenched only to press against his eyes, blocking out the harsh fluorescent light. He saw Leah's face in the dark, her smile soft, her eyes always knowing more than he said aloud. She had been the one who softened the edges of his rigid life as a cop, who laughed him out of his silences, who hummed lullabies to Anna when nightmares came. He had lost her in a breath, and now he feared losing their daughter the same way. A sound broke through the flood of memory, the scrape of claws against linoleum. Daniel lowered his hands and found Kaiser padding silently into the waiting room, guided by a nurse who had let him in. The shepherd's presence filled the sterile space instantly, a warmth in the cold. He came straight to Daniel, sitting squarely at his feet, his head pressing against Daniel's knee with quiet insistence. Daniel's fingers found fur, clutching it like an anchor. The coarse warmth steadied him, but it also cut deeper, because he remembered too clearly the image of Anna at the funeral, clutching the same dog as though he were the only safe thing left in her world. I promised her Leah, Daniel whispered into the empty room, his hand trembling against Kaiser's neck. His voice cracked, thin and raw. I promised I'd keep her safe, and I failed, just like I failed you. Kaiser gave no answer, only pressed closer, his weight solid, his eyes lifted toward Daniel, as if to remind him that failure hadn't been complete. Not yet. Anna was still breathing. She was still fighting. Daniel dragged in a breath, chest tight, throat raw. His body ached with fatigue, but sleep was impossible. He sat with the memories pressing down on him, with the weight of promises broken and still clung to, and with the steady warmth of a dog who had saved his daughter when he could not. The waiting room buzzed with its sterile silence, but Daniel knew he was not alone in it. Not entirely. And for tonight, that had to be enough. The hallway outside Anna's room was quiet. Too quiet, save for the muted hum of machines and the occasional shuffle of nurses passing by. Daniel leaned against the wall, his shoulders heavy, his eyes fixed on the sterile linoleum at his feet. Kaiser sat beside him, the shepherd's ears pricked, his body rigid as though he too sensed the storm building inside Daniel. Karen O'Donnell approached slowly from the far end of the corridor. She looked smaller than usual beneath the fluorescent lights, her salt and pepper hair pulled into a loose bun, her cardigan sagging at the elbows. The paper cup of coffee in her hand trembled, sloshing dark liquid dangerously close to the rim. She stopped a few feet away, hesitant, her gaze darting to the closed door of Anna's room before landing on Daniel. "Mr. Morris," she began, her voice a whisper that wavered. Daniel didn't answer. He straightened, his jaw tight, his face unreadable, but his silence sharper than words. Karen clutched the coffee tighter, her knuckles pale. I should have been there sooner. She told me she wanted to rest, and I thought she was reading upstairs. I was in the kitchen, distracted. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I was checking my phone. I didn't hear her until... She trailed off, eyes glistening. Daniel's head lifted, and for the first time, he looked at her, really looked. His eyes were rimmed red from exhaustion, but behind them burned something raw. "You were downstairs," he said slowly, his voice low and tight, "while my daughter was upstairs collapsing on the floor." Karen flinched, her shoulders hunching as though the words themselves were blows. "I thought she would call if she needed me," she whispered. "She couldn't call." Daniel's voice cracked, echoing off the walls before he reined it back. He raked a hand through his hair, the sound of his own outburst rattling inside his chest. He wasn't shouting at her out of hatred. He knew that even in the heat of his anger, but the despair came out sharp, cutting. "She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. And you were... what? Scrolling through recipes? Sending texts?" Karen's lips parted as if to respond, but nothing came. Her eyes filled, tears spilling onto her cheeks, unchecked. "I failed her," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I failed you. You trusted me, and I..." She covered her mouth with a trembling hand, muffling a sob. For a moment, Daniel's fury froze, suspended by the sight of the woman unraveling in front of him. Karen had been steady, reliable, a quiet presence in their lives since Leah's death. She had baked cookies with Anna, sat beside her during storms, helped with homework at the kitchen table. And now she looked like a child herself, small, ashamed, lost. "I was supposed to keep her safe," Karen choked out, lowering her hand, her words tumbling in broken fragments. "I thought I could handle it, but I got careless. I didn't listen. I didn't realize how quickly it could happen. When I found her, God, I'll never forget it. She looked so still, and I froze. If it hadn't been for you and that dog." She pressed a hand to her chest, as if steadying her own racing heart. Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides. He wanted to lash out again, to give voice to the storm of guilt and terror twisting inside him. But the truth was cruel and simple. He wasn't angry only at Karen. He was angry at himself. For being away. For believing 10 months of stability meant safety. For thinking strength meant distance. He exhaled sharply, the sound closer to a groan. His eyes dropped to Kaiser, who sat like a sentinel at his side, amber gaze flicking between the two humans as though he understood every word. The dog's calm steadiness reminded him of the truth he didn't want to face. Kaiser had saved Anna. Not him, not Karen. Kaiser. "Do you know what I told Leah at her funeral?" Daniel asked suddenly, his voice hoarse. Karen blinked, caught off guard by the shift. "No. I promised her I'd keep Anna safe, that I'd never let her be unguarded, not once, not ever." His eyes glistened, his jaw trembling as he forced the words out. "And tonight, I nearly lost her. Again." Karen pressed the coffee cup against her chest like a shield. "You haven't lost her," she said softly, though her voice cracked on the words. "She's here. She's breathing. She's alive because of you." "No!" Daniel shook his head violently, cutting her off. His hand fell to Kaiser's neck, gripping the thick fur. "She's alive because of him, because he saw what we didn't. And because he broke his training and barked when he wasn't supposed to. A dog did what two grown adults failed to do." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with shared shame. Karen's tears slipped silently down her face. Daniel's chest heaved as though each breath weighed him down further. Finally, Karen spoke, her voice fragile. "If you want me gone, I'll understand. I'll pack my things tonight. You'll never have to see me again." Daniel stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The anger in him hadn't fully cooled, but beneath it ran exhaustion, grief, and something like reluctant compassion. He saw not just a caretaker who had failed, but a woman who had tried, who had loved Anna in her own way, and who was now drowning in her own sense of guilt. He closed his eyes, rubbed a hand over his face, and sighed. "Not now," he muttered finally, his voice drained. "Anna likes you. She trusts you. I can't take that from her." "Not tonight." Karen's shoulders sagged with relief and sorrow all at once. She nodded quickly, clutching the coffee as if it anchored her in place. "I'll do better," she whispered. "I swear to you, I'll never take my eyes off her again." Daniel didn't answer. He turned back toward the door of Anna's room, his gaze softening at the thought of her small body in that hospital bed. Kaiser pressed closer against his leg, as if sensing that this fragile truce was the only thing holding them together, and in that cold, sterile hallway with guilt clinging to them both like shadows, Daniel realized the truth he had been avoiding all along. It wasn't Karen he couldn't forgive. It was himself. The house felt different that night. Not the kind of difference that came with rearranged furniture or a light bulb gone dim, but the kind that whispered from the walls themselves, a stillness heavy with absence. Daniel stepped inside, the duffel bag hanging from his shoulder, his boots dragging faintly against the hardwood floor. He had come only to collect essentials for Anna's stay at the hospital. Clothes, her favorite blanket, maybe the sketchbook she never went to bed without. Kaiser padded close at his side, nails clicking against the boards. The shepherd's ears flicked with every creak of the old house, his body taut but purposeful. For him, the house too carried a weight. Anna wasn't here, and he knew it. Daniel moved slowly through the living room, eyes brushing over the cinnamon candle burned low on the coffee table, the half-folded blanket left draped across the couch, the forgotten mug of cocoa staining a ring on the coaster. All small traces of a child who should have been giggling upstairs, not tethered to monitors beneath sterile hospital lights. He swallowed hard, forcing his legs to climb the staircase. Upstairs, Anna's room waited at the end of the hall. He paused at the threshold before opening the door, his hand tight on the knob. Inside, the air smelled faintly of crayons and lavender, the candle stub still on the nightstand. Her slippers were kicked off near the bed. One overturned as though she'd meant to slip it back on, but never had the chance. The sight made his chest ache. He stepped inside, setting the duffel on the edge of the bed. He pulled open drawers and cabinets, gathering what he could think of. Clean pajamas, a stack of colored pencils, the tattered stuffed rabbit Anna had carried since she was 4. He tried to focus on the task, to keep his hands busy, so his mind wouldn't spiral back to the image of her body curled, pale, and trembling on the floor. A sound broke the rhythm. Kaiser, who had been silent until now, moved toward the desk in the corner. His steps were deliberate, ears angled forward. He sniffed at the bottom drawer, then turned his head toward Daniel. "What is it, boy?" Daniel asked, distracted, tugging open the top dresser. The shepherd didn't move. He pressed his nose firmly against the drawer, then lifted one paw and tapped it once, claws clicking against the wood. His amber eyes locked on Daniel, steady, insistent. Daniel frowned, straightening. He wiped a hand over his jaw, weary. "Not now. We don't have time for this." But Kaiser tapped again. One paw, one sharp sound. Then he sat back, gaze unblinking. Something in the dog's stillness sent a ripple through Daniel's chest. He crossed the room and crouched, tugging at the drawer handle. It resisted at first, the wood swollen from years of overstuffed papers and broken runners. With a grunt, he gave it another pull. It groaned open at last, the scent of paper and dust wafting out. Inside lay a small stack of folded pages, bound with a purple rubber band. The handwriting scrawled across the top sheet read, in careful pencil, "To Mommy." Daniel froze. His breath caught sharp in his throat, his fingers hovering just above the bundle. For a moment he couldn't move, as though touching them would unravel something too fragile to survive. Finally, with trembling hands, he slid the rubber band free and opened the first letter. "Dear Mommy, I miss you. I miss when you sang at night and tucked me in. Daddy says I'm strong, but sometimes I don't want to be strong. Sometimes I just want you to tell me it's okay to cry." Daniel's vision blurred. His chest tightened as he gripped the page, his thumb smudging the pencil lines. He read on, each word striking deeper than the last. "If I get sick again, I don't want Daddy to think I'm a burden. I don't want him to be sad because of me. I try to hide it, but sometimes it hurts too much." His body folded inward, his head bowing over the letters. He felt Kaiser shift closer, the shepherd's head pressing against his shoulder as though to keep him upright. Daniel's breath shuddered out, the paper trembling in his hands. He flipped through more pages, unable to stop himself. Each letter was another quiet confession Anna had never spoken aloud. "I sit down and count, like you taught me, Mommy, but sometimes the buzzing in my head won't stop. I don't tell Daddy, because when he gets quiet, I feel like I did something wrong." Daniel's jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The tears he had fought back for years now streaked down his face unchecked. All this time, he thought silence meant strength, that by not breaking, by not letting her see his grief, he was protecting her. But in his silence, he had taught her to hide too, to swallow her fear, to carry the weight alone. He pressed the bundle of letters against his chest, his shoulders trembling. "God, Leah," he whispered, his voice breaking. I didn't know she was hurting this much." Kaiser let out a low whine, his breath warm against Daniel's ear. The dog nudged his cheek once, a gesture so gentle, so knowing, that Daniel almost shattered completely. He reached up, clutching the shepherd's thick neck with one hand, grounding himself in the steady heartbeat of the animal who had carried them both through more than they realized. After a long moment, he placed the letters back in the drawer, smoothing them carefully, as though they were living things. He closed it softly, the wood creaking in protest, then sat on the edge of Anna's bed. The stuffed rabbit lay beside him, its ear bent, threadbare from years of love. He buried his face in his hands. The weight of grief and guilt pressed down like stone. But beneath it stirred something else. A decision. He could not let this continue. He could not let his daughter suffer in silence while he hid behind strength that wasn't strength at all. Kaiser settled at his feet, head resting on his boots, eyes lifted with quiet vigilance. The silent guardian, always watching, always knowing, and for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to break. Not in front of his daughter, not in front of the world, but here, in the small lavender-scented room, with only a dog to witness. The letters lay on Anna's desk, a fragile stack bound only by a faded purple rubber band. Daniel sat in the quiet of her room, the lavender scent lingering in the air. The bedside lamp cast a warm circle of light, leaving the rest in muted shadow. Outside, Vermont fog pressed thick against the windows. His fingers hovered over the stack, as though afraid they might crumble. At last, he pulled one free. The folds resisted, as if the page wanted to stay closed. The first words were written in the uneven strokes of a child still learning pencil and paper. "Dear Mommy, I miss you every day. I miss the way you made the house smell like cookies and the way you tucked me in at night. Daddy tries, but he doesn't sing like you. When I'm scared, I hum to myself and pretend it's you." Daniel's throat tightened. He blinked rapidly but kept reading. "Sometimes when I feel dizzy, I sit down and count, like you taught me. But sometimes it doesn't help. I don't tell Daddy because when I do, he gets quiet. When he gets quiet, I feel like I made him sad. I don't want to make him sad anymore." His hand shook, the paper trembling. Each sentence was gentle in its innocence, merciless in its truth. He opened another. "If I get sick again, I don't want Daddy to think I'm weak. He works so hard, and I don't want to be the reason he's tired. Sometimes I pretend to be fine, so he won't worry." Daniel exhaled sharply, the sound breaking like glass. He had thought his silence was strength, that hiding his fear protected her. Instead, he had taught her her pain wasn't welcome. Kaiser shifted at his feet, whining softly, resting his head against Daniel's knee. The shepherd's warmth pulled him back, urging him on. Another page. "Dear Mommy, I know you can't really read this, but it feels like maybe you can. Daddy says I'm strong, but strong feels lonely. I just want to be a kid. I just want to not be scared all the time." Daniel could almost see her at the desk, chin tucked down, stuffed rabbit by her side, pouring her fears into pages because she had nowhere else to put them. "Anna," he whispered, voice breaking. His eyes fell to the last letter. He hesitated, then unfolded it. "If I don't wake up one day, I hope Daddy remembers I tried to be brave. I don't want him to think I gave up. I just want him to know I love him, even if I don't always say it. Please tell him, Mommy." The words hit him like a blow. His chest seized, breath stumbling. He pressed the letter to his chest as though holding it could erase the truth written there. His daughter had lived with the shadow of death, and she had faced it alone. Tears blurred his vision. He bent forward, elbows on his knees, clutching the fragile page. His body trembled with the weight of years. Silence, Leah's loss, unspoken fear, seeping through the house like fog. Kaiser nudged his arm, amber eyes steady, as though he too understood. Daniel let the tears come, silent at first, then harder, raw sobs shaking him open. It was not weakness, it was truth, finally breaking through. He thought of Leah, her laughter in the kitchen, her voice reminding him not to carry everything alone. He had failed to listen then. He would not fail again. The letters spread across the desk like a map of his daughter's hidden world. A world she had entered because he had built a fortress of silence. "No more," he whispered, stroking Kaiser's fur. "She won't carry this alone. Not again." The shepherd pressed closer, eyes closing briefly, as if in agreement. Later, Daniel sat on the edge of Anna's bed, the bundle of letters loose in his hands. He didn't need to read further. The words were etched into him now. "I don't tell Daddy, because when he gets quiet, I feel like I did something wrong." He pressed the pages to his forehead, shoulders shaking as he finally let go. For years, he had buried grief behind walls, raising Anna with routines and stoicism, swallowing every tear. He had believed that was strength, but his silence had taught her to silence herself. A low whine broke the air. Kaiser climbed onto the bed without waiting for permission, the mattress dipping under his weight. He settled across Daniel's lap, steady and warm. Daniel's fingers clutched fistfuls of fur, anchoring himself. "I taught her wrong," he whispered, voice raw. "I thought I was protecting her, but she saw me shut down, and she thought that's what she had to do, too." His hand trembled, tears soaking the pages. "God, Leah. She writes to you because she can't talk to me. She hides because my silence told her pain wasn't welcome." The sob that tore through him was guttural, pulled from the soul itself. He bent forward, forehead pressed into Kaiser's neck, the dog absorbing his collapse without flinching. Minutes blurred. When the sobs eased, only ache remained. Daniel lifted his head slowly, his face wet, eyes red. The words that cut deepest echoed in him. "Strong feels lonely." That was the lesson he had given her. That strength meant swallowing everything alone. His hand moved back to Kaiser's head. "You knew, didn't you, boy? You always know." The shepherd's amber eyes met his patient, as if confirming it. For the first time, Daniel allowed himself to say it aloud. To the dog, to the memory of his wife, to the quiet room. "I can't be that man anymore. She needs to see me break. She needs to know it's okay to cry, to admit she's scared. She needs to know she's not alone." The words hung fragile but resolute. Fatherhood, he realized, wasn't endurance. It was a presence. It was listening. It was letting her see the cracks, so she'd know she didn't have to hide hers. He set the letters carefully on the nightstand, smoothing their edges, then leaned back, one hand resting on Kaiser's flank, the other covering his face as the last of his sobs faded. The bed creaked as Kaiser stretched across the covers, his body pressed firm against Daniel's thigh. His weight was a vow, "You are not alone." Daniel drew a long breath and let it out slowly. He was broken, yes, but in the breaking came clarity. He would not let Anna's letters remain confessions in secret. He would meet her with openness, with love that welcomed truth. He rose, pacing slowly. On her corkboard hung drawings, Kaiser under trees, their house with smoke curling from the chimney, a family that still included her mother. Each sketch spoke what she could not. She still needed both of them. And though Leah was gone, Daniel could still show up, not as a wall, but as an open door. At the window, fog pressed the glass. He could almost hear Leah's voice. "Let her in. Don't make her walk alone." Daniel pressed his palm to the pain. "The only thing worse than her seeing me break," he admitted softly, "is her thinking she has to break alone." Kaiser padded across the room to stand beside him. Daniel crouched, resting his forehead against the shepherd's. "You've been guarding her heart while I was too busy guarding mine." The dog's tail brushed once against the floor. Resolve steadied Daniel's spine where grief had bent it. Tomorrow things would be different. He would tell Anna the truth, that he was afraid too, that her sickness terrified him, but nothing could make her less loved. She would see him vulnerable, so she'd know she didn't have to hide. He picked up her stuffed rabbit from the bed, placing it gently into her hospital bag. The letters stayed in the drawer. Not his to keep, but impossible to forget. They had given him a second chance. Kaiser circled and lay across the bed, his eyes glowing faintly in the lamplight. Daniel lingered in the doorway, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His face was weary, but his eyes carried something new. A decision. "Watch over her for me tonight," he whispered, though he knew the command was unnecessary. Kaiser's tail thumped once, a silent vow. Daniel closed the door quietly, stepping into the hallway with the weight of change pressing into his chest. He could not undo the past, but he could choose differently now, and in that choice there was hope. The hospital room was dim, blinds drawn against the grey dawn. Machines hummed in rhythm, their lights blinking like distant stars. The oxygen line whispered faintly with each breath Anna took. Daniel sat slouched in a chair at her bedside, head bowed, body heavy with exhaustion. He hadn't slept since they'd rushed her here. Every time his eyes closed, he saw her crumpled on the bedroom floor, lips tinged blue. On the linoleum, Kaiser lay stretched out, chin on his paws, eyes half-lidded but alert. Every beep, every sigh of air made one ear flick. Even in rest, the shepherd's body seemed tethered to Anna's fragile pulse. Daniel rubbed his face, stubble scratching against his palm. His gaze lingered on Anna's limp hand, the pulse oximeter glowing against her finger. He longed to hold it, but feared disturbing the delicate balance that kept her here. Then, movement. Her lashes fluttered once, then again. A sound slipped from her lips, dry and broken. Daniel's head snapped up, heart jolting. "Anna?" His voice was low, desperate, the name itself a prayer. Her gaze, unfocused at first, steadied just enough to find the shape on the floor. Her lips parted, and with a breath so faint it barely carried. "Kaiser." The shepherd's ears pricked. In one fluid motion, he rose and padded to the bed. With careful grace, he placed his paws on the mattress and pressed his muzzle into her hand. Her fingers twitched, then curled weakly into his fur. A ghost of a smile tugged her lips. Daniel's vision blurred. Tears slid free, hot against his skin. He pressed a trembling hand to his mouth. A sob caught too deep to voice. His daughter clung to the dog, who had refused to leave her side, who had broken rules and instinct to save her. Kaiser licked her palm once, then laid his head beside her hand, eyes never leaving her face. "Hey, baby," Daniel managed, his voice cracked. He leaned forward, gripping the rails of the bed. "I'm right here. You're safe. You're okay." Anna turned slightly, her gaze drifting toward him. Her eyes, rimmed with fatigue, held recognition. "Daddy?" Daniel's chest caved at the sound. He brushed a strand of damp hair from her forehead with a trembling touch. "You scared me half to death," he whispered, his voice breaking. Her lips parted. "Sorry." The word crushed him. He shook his head fiercely. "No, Anna. Don't you ever apologize. None of this is your fault. You're here. That's all that matters." Her strength waned, eyes closing again, but her fingers never let go of Kaiser. Daniel lowered his forehead to the bed, clutching her hand and the shepherd's fur together. Silent tears shook him, but the silence was different now, fragile, alive, the kind that comes after a storm, when rain has passed, but sunlight waits. "You saved her," he whispered into Kaiser's ear. "You saved us both." For a long moment, the three of them stayed bound in that fragile circle, one barely awake, one broken open, and one steadfast guardian anchoring them both. By afternoon, pale light painted stripes across the sterile walls. Monitors hummed steadily, a metronome keeping time with Anna's breath. She stirred, lashes fluttering. Slowly, her eyes opened, hazy but aware. "Daddy?" Daniel leaned close, relief rushing through him. "I'm here, sweetheart, right here." Her gaze drifted to the floor, where Kaiser lay sprawled. At the sound of her voice, he lifted his head, ears pricking forward. Anna's lips curved faintly. Kaiser stayed. "He always does," Daniel said softly, brushing her hair back. Her fingers twitched against the blanket until they found his hand. He held it gently, careful not to squeeze too hard. Her eyes met his, storm gathering there. "Daddy." "I felt it." He tensed. "What do you mean?" "The seizure," she whispered. "I felt it yesterday. My head was buzzing. My body is heavy. I knew it was coming." Guilt shadowed her face. "But I didn't say anything." Daniel's throat closed. "Anna, I didn't want to ruin it," she interrupted, her voice breaking. Tears slid down her temples. "You were coming home. You looked so tired. I didn't want to make you sad." The words gutted him. He thought of her hidden letters, confessions written instead of spoken. Now she was giving him her voice. "Baby girl," he rasped, kissing her knuckles. "You could never ruin anything for me. Never." Her tears came harder. "But every time I get sick, you get so quiet. Like I disappointed you." Daniel's eyes blurred. The pain in her words pierced him deeper than any blade. "No," he said fiercely. "No, Anna. I get quiet because I'm scared, because I don't know how to fix it. But I have never been disappointed in you." She sniffled, voice trembling. "Do you blame me when I get sick?" The question shattered him. His chest heaved, his tears spilling unchecked. He cupped her face with calloused hands. "No," he whispered. "Broken. God, no. None of this is your fault. You are not to blame. You are the bravest person I know." His forehead pressed to hers, their tears mingling. "If I ever made you feel otherwise, that's on me." "Not you." Her body shuddered, whispering, "I just wanted you to be proud." Daniel kissed her damp forehead, his tears falling into her hair. "Anna, I am proud of you every single day. For your laughter, for your drawings, for your courage, for being you. Not because you're strong, but because you're you. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, a fragile smile trembling at her lips. Kaiser rose from the floor, stepping closer. With quiet grace, he rested his chin on the mattress, pressing his nose into her side. Anna reached for him with her free hand, burying her fingers in his fur. "See?" Daniel said softly. "Even he knows. He never leaves, because he knows how much you matter." Anna gave a shaky laugh, fragile but real. "He's the best." "He is," Daniel agreed, voice thick. He stroked her hair. "But you're the reason he fights so hard. Because he loves you, just like I do. And nothing, no sickness, no fear, will ever change that." For the first time in months, Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief exactly, but a crack where light could get in. The silence between them no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a bridge. As Anna drifted towards sleep, her hands clinging to both her father and her dog, Daniel whispered his vow. "You'll never carry this alone, Anna. Not while I'm here. Not ever." Kaiser's tail brushed softly against the bed, as though sealing the promise. The bustle of nurses faded. Evening light softened the room to amber. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on his daughter. Kaiser had claimed his place between them, stretched across the blanket, his body not just guarding, but holding them together. Anna's hand rested firmly in his fur, her knuckles white as if afraid to let go. Daniel covered her other hand with his own. For a long moment he simply looked at her, this child who carried more than she should, who had once written fears into secret letters because he hadn't given her space for them. The weight pressed on him until he finally spoke. "Anna," he whispered, voice unsteady. "I need to tell you something." Her tired eyes lifted. "What?" "I'm sorry," he said, the words raw. "For making you think you had to hide. For making you believe being sick or scared was something you couldn't share with me. I thought staying strong meant being silent. But all it did was teach you to hide your fear too." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to make you sad. When you get quiet, it feels like it's my fault." The words sliced him open. He bent forward, pressing his forehead to her hand. "It was never your fault. My silence hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I can promise you this." He lifted his head, meeting her gaze through tears. "From now on, I won't shut you out. If you're scared, we'll talk. If you feel something coming, you tell me. We'll face it together. Always." Her breath hitched. "Even if it makes you scared?" Daniel nodded. "Especially then, because being scared doesn't mean we're weak. It just means we need each other. And I need you, Anna. More than I can say." She studied him through glistening eyes, then brushed his cheek with trembling fingers. "I need you too." Kaiser shifted, pressing his head against Daniel's arm, while his tail swept Anna's side. His bulk lay like a bridge, solid, unbreakable, binding them together. Daniel let out a shaky laugh through tears. "Looks like Kaiser's making sure we keep our promise." Anna smiled faintly, her hand tightening in his fur. "He always does." Silence followed, but softer now, filled with the rhythm of 3 hearts beating in fragile unison. "I love you," Daniel said at last, his voice quiet but fierce. "And I'm proud of you. Not for hiding, not for pretending, but just for being you." "I love you too, Daddy," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, lingering as though imprinting the moment. Kaiser gave a low, contented huff, eyes sliding shut as though satisfied. The twilight deepened, amber fading to dusk. In the quiet room, 3 figures remained bound together. A weary father learning to soften, a fragile daughter learning to trust, and a dog whose loyalty had never faltered. And for the first time since Leah's death, Daniel felt hope. Not because the road ahead would be easy, but because he knew they would walk it together. The first Saturday after Anna's release from the hospital dawned grey, a thin drizzle streaking the windows of Pine Hollow. The town was hushed in late November stillness. Daniel stood in the doorway of his old home office, staring at the space that had once been his retreat. Stacks of case files sagged on the shelves, their edges curling with age. A battered desk sat scarred with coffee rings and half-written reports. The lamp in the corner fought stubborn shadows, casting a weak glow over years of silence and duty. Now, Daniel saw it differently. Not a refuge, but a prison, a reflection of the walls he had built inside himself. He rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling slowly. "Not anymore," he murmured. Kaiser padded into the doorway, amber eyes steady. Daniel bent to scratch his ear. "We're going to change this. No more shadows. Anna deserves light." That afternoon, he began. The shelves emptied, files boxed, commendations wrapped in newspaper and tucked into the attic. Each item gone lifted the room's heaviness. By evening, the space was bare. Echoing walls, stripped shelves, the desk dragged into the garage. For the first time, possibility filled the air. The next morning, Daniel drove into town. Anna was resting on the couch with her sketchbook, Kaiser curled at her feet. He kissed her forehead before leaving. She only smiled faintly, too tired to ask. At the hardware store, Daniel faced rows of paint swatches, soft blues, gentle greens, buttery yellows. For years he had chosen navy, black, grey, the armor of a man trying to vanish. But now he pictured Anna by the window, Kaiser at her side, the walls glowing with warmth. His hand landed on pastel lavender, delicate but steady, like the wildflowers Leah used to bring home. "Lavender," he whispered. "She'll like this." He picked white shelves, a drawing table angled for light, a lamp spilling golden warmth, a cream rug, and finally a dog bed large enough for Kaiser. The truck was full by the time he returned. That night, after Anna fell asleep, Daniel and Kaiser began. Tarps across the floor, tape on the corners, the sharp scent of new paint filling the air. With every stroke of lavender, the shadows disappeared. Kaiser lay in the doorway, watchful, as though approving. Daniel painted until his arms ached, and sweat dampened his shirt. He built the shelves next, hands steady, the hours sliding into dawn. By morning, the room was no longer an office of burdens, but a canvas of hope. On the third day, he added details. The drawing table by the window, shelves filled with sketchbooks and storybooks, curtains patterned with white stars, the rug warm and inviting, Kaiser's bed in the corner. Last, a small framed photo of Leah holding toddler Anna, not a shrine, but a reminder of love that still lived. When it was finished, Daniel stood in the middle, chest rising with quiet relief. Lavender walls breathed softly, shelves gleamed, air felt lighter. Kaiser padded in, circled twice, and settled into his new bed with a sigh. "It's ready, boy," Daniel whispered. "Her safe place. No more shadows." That afternoon, rain pattered at the windows. Daniel led Anna upstairs, her small hand warm in his. Kaiser trotted behind, nails clicking. "Close your eyes," Daniel said at the landing. Anna tilted her head. "Why?" "Because it's a surprise. Trust me?" Her lips curved faintly. "Always." He guided her down the hallway, past family photos. The air smelled faintly of lavender and fresh wood. Daniel's palms were damp as they stopped before the closed door. "Ready?" Anna nodded, eyes shut. "Okay. Open." For a heartbeat, she was silent. Her eyes widened at the lavender walls glowing in soft light, the dark office gone. She saw the cushioned window seat draped with blankets, the drawing table with neat rows of pencils and paints, the shelves lined with books within her reach. Finally, her gaze landed on the cream rug, with Kaiser's bed tucked in the corner. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes as a trembling smile spread across her face. "Daddy," she whispered. "It feels safe." The words struck deeper than any badge Daniel had ever worn. His throat tightened. "That's all I wanted," he murmured. Kaiser bounded forward, circling on the rug before settling into his bed. Anna giggled through her tears, kneeling to bury her face in his fur. Daniel's vision blurred as he watched. The first time in so long she had laughed freely. Anna turned back to him. "You made this for me." "Every bit," he said softly. "Because you deserve light, not shadows." She flung her arms around his neck, clutching tight. Tears slipped down Daniel's face as he held her, breathing in the scent of shampoo and paint, a smell that already felt like healing. "I love it," she whispered. "I love you," he answered, his voice steady now. For the rest of the afternoon, Anna explored every corner. She traced the shelves, flipped open sketchbooks, curled into the reading nook with Kaiser. Daniel sat back, watching her reclaim joy piece by piece. The house no longer felt burdened by silence. It breathed with them now, its shadows lifted by lavender and laughter. That evening, Anna sat at her new drawing table, colored pencils scratching across the page. She drew a stormy sky, dark clouds, and in the center, Kaiser, chest broad, eyes sharp, body angled like a shield. Behind him, a small girl clutched a stuffed rabbit, wide-eyed but safe. She whispered, "My protector." Daniel's throat tightened. "It's beautiful, kiddo. Do you think Mommy would like it?" "She'd love it," he said, voice breaking. "She'd say, you drew the truth." Soon, exhaustion caught her. She curled into bed, Kaiser leaping up beside her. He settled against her side, his warmth a solid comfort. Daniel adjusted the lamp, kissed her forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Daddy." "Good night, Kaiser." The shepherd gave a low grunt, resting his chin across her chest. Daniel lingered in the doorway, the silence now soothing instead of suffocating. Then Anna whimpered in her sleep, her hands twitching. Daniel's chest seized, but before he could move, Kaiser pressed his muzzle against her chest, warm breath fanning steady across her. Slowly her face relaxed, fingers unclenched, a faint smile ghosting her lips. Relief crashed over Daniel. Kaiser had done what no machine, no doctor, no father could. Anchored her. "Thank you," Daniel whispered into the quiet. Anna's hand slid across the blanket until it found Kaiser's fur. Even in sleep, she sought him. Even in silence, he answered. For the first time in years, Daniel allowed his shoulders to drop. It wasn't just Anna's first night in a new room. It was their first night of peace, and for that, he let himself breathe. The first rays of winter sunlight crept across the frosted windows of the Morris home, catching in tiny crystals formed overnight. Pine Hollow mornings were always sharp in their cold, soft in their silence. Once, Daniel had moved through them on autopilot. But now, each dawn felt like the start of something fragile but alive. The kitchen smelled of coffee and cinnamon. Anna's idea. She insisted on lighting candles even at breakfast. Daniel stood at the counter as the coffee maker sputtered and hissed into his chipped mug. He was used to that sound now. What still startled him, gently, was the scratch of pencil on paper. At the kitchen table, Anna sat with a blanket draped around her shoulders, sketchbook open. Some days she drew Kaiser sprawled beneath the window, others the maple tree outside. This morning, she was sketching steam rising from Daniel's mug, brow furrowed in quiet focus. Kaiser lay beside her chair, eyes half closed but alert. Occasionally, he'd lift his nose toward the page, then settle again. Daniel brought his mug to the table. "That one looks good," he said. Anna glanced up, cheeks coloring. "It's just practice." "Practice makes art," he replied. "Your mom used to say that." "She did?" Daniel nodded. "She believed the best things in life start as practice. Love, patience, even coffee." Anna smiled faintly. The moment held, a quiet, slow morning stitched together with warmth and presence. Evenings brought a different rhythm. After dinner, Anna curled up on the couch. Kaiser stretched out between them. Daniel read aloud from old fairy tales or dusty mysteries. His voice, once shaped by reports and procedures, had softened. At first he fumbled through the stories, but Anna didn't mind. She only cared that he stayed. One night, he read about a boy and his dog, lost in a snowstorm. As the boy nearly gave up hope, Anna pressed closer to Kaiser, her fingers curling into his fur. Daniel closed the book, voice low. "Not every story has a happy ending." "Does this one?" she asked. He paused, then said softly, "Yes, because they had each other. That's what matters." Anna rested her head on Kaiser's shoulder. "Then it's a good story." The nights always ended the same. Anna asleep, Kaiser curled protectively beside her, Daniel watching with a quiet gratitude. These routines, coffee, sketching, reading, were small but powerful. They stitched their lives back together, one thread at a time. For Daniel, it was healing. For Anna, safety. For Kaiser, purpose. And together, it was home. A Saturday morning in late February brought slush and damp air that hinted at spring. Daniel sorted mail at the counter, while Anna sketched on the rug. Kaiser lounged beside her. Most of the envelopes were bills and flyers, but one stood out. A flyer, bright and glossy, with watercolor swirls at the top. Pine Hollow Annual Youth Art Showcase, ages 6 to 12. Theme: What makes you feel safe? Daniel hesitated. Opportunities like this always stirred something fragile. Hope, fear, both at once. He glanced at Anna, still drawing Kaiser surrounded by storm clouds. "Hey, Anna," he said gently. "Take a look at this." She read the flyer aloud, her voice soft. "What makes you feel safe?" Daniel nodded. "You'd be great at this. You already draw every day." Her eyes lifted to his. "Do you think they'd like my drawings?" I think they'd feel them, he said. That matters more. Her gaze shifted to Kaiser, who stretched on the rug, tail thumping. A slow smile spread across her face. I want to draw him, she whispered. Because he's why I feel safe. Daniel knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. That sounds perfect. She pressed the flyer flat into her sketchbook. I know what I'll call it, she said. My guardian. That afternoon, the flyer followed her everywhere. Taped above her desk, tucked into her backpack, gently folded between sketchbook pages. She read it again and again, tracing the theme with her fingertip like a prayer. That night, while Daniel read from a mystery novel, Anna interrupted. Daddy? Yeah? Do you think the other kids will draw their moms or dads? Maybe. Or their homes. Or favorite places. She was quiet. But is it okay if I just draw Kaiser? He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. It's more than okay. You draw what's true. Kaiser placed his head in her lap. She stroked his fur, already seeing the picture in her mind. Daniel resumed reading, but his thoughts stayed on the flyer. It wasn't just a contest. It was a doorway for Anna to share something she hadn't put into words. And maybe, for him, a chance to see her strength not just as a father, but as a witness. The flyer was pinned above Anna's desk, its corners curled from being retaped. Her pencils were lined neatly, a fresh sheet of thick white paper glowing under the desk lamp. She sat still for a long while, knees tucked under her, staring at the page. Kaiser breathed steadily behind her, occasionally lifting his head to check on her. Daniel stood at the door but said nothing. He knew this wasn't just another drawing. This was her voice. Finally, Anna picked up her pencil. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from weight. She started with a small figure in the corner. A girl with tangled hair, arms wrapped around a stuffed rabbit. Then came the storm. Jagged clouds, swirling wind, slanted rain. It wasn't just weather. It was memory. The seizures. The silence. The fear of being a burden. And then, Kaiser. Her strokes grew softer. She drew him large, body arched like a shield. Eyes bright, posture strong. Around him, the storm raged. But the girl beneath stayed untouched. When she finished the outlines, Anna stared at it for a long time. Her hand smudged the bottom of the page. She wiped her eyes quickly with her sleeve. Kaiser stirred, nudged her elbow. She smiled. "It's you," she whispered, tilting the page toward him. "You're my guardian." Daniel stepped inside. "May I see?" She nodded, handing it over. He held it carefully. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was pain and love rendered in graphite and color. "Anna, this is powerful." "Do you think they'll understand?" she asked quietly. He met her eyes. "Anyone who's ever needed someone to stand between them and the storm will understand. And I think that's everyone." Anna flushed. She turned back, pulling out her colored pencils. "I'm not done yet." Daniel stepped back, letting her work. Over the next hour, the storm took on hues of blue and violet. The rabbit was soft brown. Kaiser's fur came alive with gold and black, his eyes a glowing amber. When she finally set her pencil down, she leaned back, hands smudged, but glowing with quiet pride. Daniel picked up the drawing again. At the bottom, in block letters, she had signed it. "My guardian." He felt something shift inside. This wasn't just art. It was a declaration. That safety wasn't silence. It was a presence. It was truth. Kaiser nudged closer, laying his head in Anna's lap. She stroked his fur gently. "I think Mommy would be proud," she whispered. Daniel crouched beside her, voice rough. "She would, and so am I." For the first time in a long time, Anna didn't hide her smile. The envelope felt heavier than it should. Just paper and pencil, Anna's drawing tucked safely between cardboard. But in Daniel's hands, it carried more than weight. At the top corner, written in blocky, careful letters, "My guardian," still round with childhood, but sharp with truth. Anna hovered beside him, eyes wide, tugging at her sweater sleeve. She'd worked on the drawing for days, perfecting every detail. Letting go wasn't easy. "Are you sure it's ready?" Daniel asked. She nodded, then hesitated. "Do you think they'll like it?" He wanted to tell her it didn't matter, but what she needed was certainty. He rested his hand over hers. "They'll feel it, Anna. And that's what matters." Kaiser lifted his head from the rug, his amber gaze flicking between them. With a soft thump of his tail, he gave his approval. At the Pine Hollow post office, Anna clutched the envelope to her chest. When Daniel offered to carry it, she shook her head. "No, I'll do it." Inside, she placed it on the counter like something sacred. The clerk weighed it, stamped it, and slipped it gently into the bin. "That's it," the woman said kindly. "It's on its way." Anna turned to Daniel. "It's really going?" He crouched beside her, smiling. "It's really going. You did it." At home, Kaiser waited by the door. Anna ran to him, hugging his neck. "They'll see you now. They'll see what you do for me." That night, as she slept with Kaiser curled against her side, Daniel sat alone at the table, coffee cooling in his hand. He wanted the world to see her, not just for talent, but truth, her courage, her voice. From the hallway, Kaiser padded in and sat at Daniel's side. He reached down, fingers in the shepherd's fur. "You saved her," he whispered. "Now she's telling the world. Maybe that's what healing looks like." March arrived with indecisive weather. Sunlight one moment, sleet the next. The Morris mailbox rarely held surprises. But that day, nestled among bills and junk, Daniel found a cream-colored envelope stamped Pine Hollow Youth Art Showcase. He stood at the curb, staring, heart thudding. "Do you think they'll like it?" Anna had asked. He told her yes. And now? When he opened the front door, Kaiser trotted forward, tail wagging, eyes flicking to the envelope, as if he already knew. "Where's Anna?" Daniel asked. Kaiser led him to the living room. Anna was on the rug, surrounded by crayons, drawing birds in a tree. "Daddy?" she asked. Daniel held up the envelope. "Something came for you." She jumped to her feet, scrambling over crayons. "Wait," he said gently, crouching to her level. "No matter what's inside, I'm already proud of you. You understand?" She nodded, eyes gleaming. "Can I open it?" He pressed it into her hands. "Go ahead." Anna opened it with trembling fingers. A folded letter slipped out. She read it silently, then gasped. "I won!" she cried. "Daddy, I won!" She launched into his arms, laughter bubbling from her chest. Kaiser barked, bounding over. She dropped to her knees and hugged him tight. "They saw you, Kaiser. They saw what you do." Daniel stood back, heart swelling. He'd earned medals, commendations, but nothing matched this. His daughter's truth had been seen. Anna thrust the letter into his hands. "Read it." He cleared his throat. "Dear Anna Morris, your artwork. My guardian has been selected as one of the winning entries. Your piece moved our judges with its emotional depth, sincerity, and strength. Congratulations. Anna spun in a joyful circle, then collapsed onto the rug, laughing. They liked it. They really liked it. Daniel knelt beside her. They didn't just like it. They felt it. She looked at Kaiser, eyes glowing. It's because of him. He keeps me safe. Daniel placed his hand on her back. And because of you. You were brave enough to share it. That evening, she taped the letter beside the flyer on her wall. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching as Kaiser curled up on her bed. The house that once held silence now held pride. The Pine Hollow Town Hall wasn't grand. White clapboard siding, tall windows, wooden steps worn by time. But that Saturday, it hummed with energy. The Youth Art Showcase had drawn families from every corner of the valley. Daniel held Anna's hand as they stepped inside. She wore her lavender hoodie, sleeves tugged nervously over her hands. Kaiser walked at their side, his coat brushed to a gleam. The organizers had made an exception, for this dog wasn't just a pet, he was part of the story. Inside, the hall had become a gallery, paintings of sunshine, stick-figure families, imagined worlds. But Daniel's eyes went straight to the center wall, my guardian. Anna's drawing hung simply, powerfully. A girl curled beneath the storm. Kaiser arched above her like a shield. The storm raged around them, but never touched her. Anna stopped in front of it, breath catching. That's mine, she whispered. Daniel knelt. It's not just yours anymore. Now it belongs to everyone who sees it. Kaiser sat in front of the drawing, ears pricked, guarding his paper self. People began to gather, first in pairs, then small groups. That dog looks like he's carrying the whole sky, someone murmured. That's not a pet, another said. That's a hero. A woman turned to Anna. Is this your work? Anna nodded. It made me cry, the woman said. You must love him very much. I do, Anna replied. He keeps me safe. Daniel felt emotion rise in his throat. Looking at the drawing again, he saw it through strangers' eyes, not just lines, but truth made visible. She had taken fear, loneliness, and turned it into something others could feel. When the showcase director stepped to the mic, Anna's hand slipped into Daniel's. Her grip was damp, but sure. Kaiser pressed against her leg, silent and steady. Among this year's submissions, one piece stood out. It reminded us that safety isn't always a place. It can be a presence. Please join me in congratulating Anna Morris for my guardian. Applause filled the hall. Anna's eyes sparkled. She looked up at Daniel. You did it, kiddo, he whispered. You really did it. She stepped forward, Kaiser at her side. The director shook her hand. Your drawing moved us all, she said. Thank you for sharing it. Anna's voice was small, but sure. Thank you for seeing it. Back with Daniel, she wrapped him in a hug. Kaiser leaned into them both, tail thumping against the floor. Daniel stood, his hands on both of them, and let the moment sink in. His daughter had found her voice, and the world had listened. Later, as the crowd drifted, he overheard a quiet comment. That dog, he's not just guarding her, he's guarding hope itself. Daniel turned toward Anna, now giggling as Kaiser licked her cheek. And for the first time in years, he let it in. Not fear, not grief, but joy. Pure, unguarded joy. The night air in Pine Hollow carried a clarity that belonged only to mountain towns. It was cool, threaded with pine, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers just waking from spring's chill. The Morris backyard stretched quiet beneath a silver moon, the grass glistening with dew. Above, constellations unfurled endlessly, and the moon hung like a polished coin. Daniel stood barefoot in the damp grass, a flannel hanging loose over his shirt. The look of a man both weary and renewed clung to him, lines etched from struggle, but softened now by something lighter. Beside him, Anna's small fingers curled around his hand. Her lavender hoodie swallowed her frame, the hood pulled up against the cold. In her other hand dangled the frayed ear of her stuffed rabbit. She leaned gently against him, cheek pressed into his arm. On her other side, Kaiser sat tall and noble, ears pricked, coat shimmering under the moon. He didn't move much, save for the slow wag of his tail, but his presence filled the yard, grounding the silence with something steady and unshakable. The three stood that way for a long time, breathing in the night, sharing its stillness. Daniel lifted his eyes to the stars, letting the quiet soak into his bones. He had lived so many nights filled with noise, sirens, radios, his own footsteps echoing down dark streets. More recently, nights of fear, the beep of hospital machines, the shallow rise of Anna's breath. But this silence was different, alive, whole. Anna tilted her face upward, her eyes reflecting the moon. "It feels big out here," she whispered. Daniel squeezed her hand. "It is big, bigger than we can imagine, but it's also ours tonight." Kaiser shifted, leaning slightly into Anna. She dropped her rabbit and pressed her hand into his thick coat. He brushed his muzzle against her arm, as if to acknowledge her touch. For Daniel, the sight was almost too much. His daughter, alive, safe, pressed between him and the dog who had saved her more than once. He wished he could frame it, hang it somewhere permanent. Instead, he let it etch itself into memory. From the edge of the yard, pine boughs whispered in the breeze. An owl hooted far off, steady and hollow. Anna leaned closer. "Do you think Mommy can see us?" Daniel's chest tightened. He studied her face in the silver light. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think she never stopped." Anna nodded, gazing at the stars. For once, she didn't look away quickly. She held the sky with her eyes, as though believing. Daniel slipped his arm around her shoulders. Kaiser lowered himself to the grass with deliberate grace, pressing along their side, a living bridge between father and daughter. The three of them belonged beneath that silver Vermont moon. No speeches, no need for words, only the shared truth that they had weathered storms together, and for this moment, they were safe. Daniel breathed deep, the scent of pine filling his lungs, and thought, "This is what it means to be home." Moonlight poured across the yard, softening every edge. For a while, silence was enough. But Daniel felt words pressing against his chest, words he had swallowed for too long, until they turned bitter. Tonight, he couldn't hold them anymore. He sank to his knees, damp grass clinging to his jeans. He wanted his eyes level with Anna's, and wanted her to see the truth without the distance of authority. She blinked, puzzled, then leaned forward, sensing something important. Kaiser eased down too, brushing against both of them. Daniel wrapped one arm around Anna, the other around Kaiser. For a moment, the three of them were tangled, father, daughter, dog, bound not by circumstance but by choice. His voice came rough at first. "Anna, I need you to hear me tonight. Really hear me." Her eyes widened, reflecting moonlight. I thought staying strong meant staying silent, he said. I thought if I didn't show fear, you wouldn't feel afraid. But I was wrong. All I did was make you think you had to hide things from me. I made you believe you were alone when you weren't. Her chin trembled, but she didn't speak. Daniel's cheek brushed her hair as he pulled her close. I can't undo the nights you felt you had to be brave alone. But I can promise you this. From now on, you will never face the storm alone. Not ever again. The words hung sacred in the air. Kaiser rumbled low in his chest, not a growl, but something older, like a drumbeat affirming the vow. He leaned more fully into them, warmth seeping into Daniel's arm, muzzle pressing into Anna's shoulder. Anna's voice came as a whisper, but it carried like a vow. You and me, and Kaiser, always. Daniel shut his eyes. Her words weren't just responses. They were trust. Fragile, but whole, handed back to him. He kissed the crown of her head. Always, he echoed. They stayed kneeling in the grass beneath indifferent stars, the world pausing to bear witness. Anna turned her face into his shoulder. Do you think Kaiser knows? Daniel smiled faintly, meeting the shepherd's amber gaze. He knows. He's known longer than we have. Kaiser's tail swept once across the grass, as if to sign his name beneath their promise. Daniel drew a breath lighter than any in years. He realized promises weren't just words. They were anchors binding him to those he loved. For the first time since Leah's death, the anchor steadied rather than crushed. He wasn't failing Anna. He wasn't just surviving. Together, with this child who carried more courage than her years, and this dog who guarded them with every heartbeat, they were beginning again. Above, the moon climbed higher, the night stretching wide to hold their vow safe. Later, the backyard folded deeper into silence. Daniel leaned against the old oak by the fence. Anna lay curled beside Kaiser, head resting on his flank, stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Kaiser cradled her with quiet vigilance, a paw draped protectively across her legs. Daniel watched them, his chest aching with something too full to name. He thought of how fragile this was, how easily the night might have ended differently. A week ago, he'd found Anna unconscious, her lips pale, her breaths shallow. For a few minutes, he hadn't known if she'd ever breathe again, but she had, because of the shepherd lying beside her now. Kaiser had been the alarm, the sentinel who refused to let danger hide in silence. If Daniel had arrived later, if the dog had stayed quiet, he closed his eyes against the thought. The stars shimmered like salt on black velvet. Daniel whispered haltingly into the night, "Leah, I don't know if you can hear me, but thank you for her, for giving me the chance to love her, even when I've stumbled." His voice broke, but the words kept coming. "I thought I had to carry this alone, that showing weakness meant breaking the promise I made at your graveside. But I see now, I was wrong. She doesn't need me to be unbreakable. She just needs me here, to let her know she's never alone." A breeze rustled the branches, carrying his confession upward. He drew a long breath, his voice steadier. "God, if you're listening, thank you for this second chance, for bringing us back from the edge, for this dog you placed in our lives, the one who keeps us steady when I falter." Kaiser's ear twitched, as though catching the praise. His eyes glinted briefly in the moonlight before closing again in quiet watch. Daniel brushed a strand of hair from Anna's face. She stirred, murmured softly, then settled. The sight of her, safe, breathing, was almost more than his heart could hold. His voice grew firm. "I can't promise her a life without storms, but I swear I'll never let her face them alone. Not while I have breath. Not while Kaiser stands watch. The stars gave no answer, but their light seemed brighter, as if bearing witness. Leaning back against the oak, Daniel tilted his head to the sky. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like a presence. Leah's memory, God's mercy, Kaiser's loyalty, woven together to hold them steady. And beneath that vast, endless canopy, he let himself believe they were not alone. March melted quietly into April, and with it came a gentleness Pine Hollow hadn't felt in months. Snow retreated from rooftops and fences, and soft green shoots nosed through thawed earth. The Morris house, once weighted with grief and fear, began to hum with a new rhythm, steady, alive, unmistakably theirs. Mornings told the story best. Daniel still woke before sunrise out of habit, but instead of dread, he found small comforts: coffee drifting from the kitchen, Anna's laughter echoing from upstairs, and Kaiser's steady paws padding across the floor, as if to remind him he wasn't alone. Some mornings, Anna brought her sketchbook down, showing him half-finished drawings while he poured her juice. The house, once too silent, now rang with ordinary sounds he had once taken for granted. Anna's health stabilized. The new medication softened the edges of her seizures, and though Daniel's vigilance never left, he no longer lived braced for the next collapse. At night, he found her breathing evenly, sometimes curled around her rabbit, more often pressed against Kaiser, who had claimed her bed as much as her heart. The girl who once hid her fears now spoke them aloud. She told him when she was dizzy, when she felt shadows pressing down, and Daniel, learning from mistakes, listened without interruption. Sometimes he had no answers, only a hug or a promise to sit with her through the storm, but he offered them freely. The house responded in kind. Sunlight lingered longer on wooden floors. Walls no longer echoed grief, but caught the rhythm of their voices. Even Leah's framed photograph looked less like a reminder of loss and more like a witness to their survival. Kaiser had woven himself into every corner of their lives. He followed Anna room to room, nudging her hand when she fell quiet, lying across her doorway at night, trotting beside her in the yard. If Daniel was the pillar, Kaiser was the shadow, always there, always watching. On Saturdays, they built new rituals. Some weekends they wandered the farmer's market, Anna skipping between stalls with a basket, while Kaiser drew smiles from neighbors who once knew him only as a police dog, but now greeted him as a guardian in retirement. Other weekends, they stayed home painting at the dining room table, music playing softly in the background. Daniel noticed the laughter most. It bubbled out of Anna in ways it hadn't since Leah's passing, filling the house like sunlight, warming corners that had been cold too long. Every time she laughed, he felt something mend inside him. One evening, while setting dishes on the table, Anna tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, I don't feel scared all the time anymore." Daniel froze, throat tightening. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm glad, sweetheart." She smiled. "I think it's because it feels like Mommy's still here, and because Kaiser makes sure I'm never alone." At his name, Kaiser thumped his tail on the floor. Daniel's heart swelled, not with grief, but with gratitude. He pulled Anna close. "She is here. Every time you laugh, every time you draw, every time we remember, we carry her with us." That night, after Anna slept with Kaiser curled at her feet, Daniel lingered at the doorway. The fear that had haunted him had softened. Not gone, but no longer sharp. The house felt alive again, not untouched by loss, but alive in a way that honored both past and future. He whispered into the quiet, "We're going to be okay." For the first time, he truly believed it. If Daniel learned anything that month, it was that miracles didn't always roar. Sometimes they came quietly, woven into everyday life, carried on the steady breath of a German shepherd who refused to leave his daughter's side. Kaiser became Anna's shadow. Wherever she went, he followed, paws a soft drumbeat on the floor. Upstairs, he padded behind her, patient when her steps slowed. Coloring in the living room, brushing her teeth, sketching at the dining room table. He was always there, a shield in silence. Daniel noticed the smallest things. The way Kaiser leaned into Anna during naps, steadying her even in sleep. The way his ears pricked at the faintest whimper, his nose nudging her hand the moment her face paled. No hesitation, no delay. Just instinct, honed by training, deepened by love. One afternoon, Anna slumped at the table, her crayon slipping from her hand. Before Daniel could move, Kaiser pressed his nose into her lap, whining low. Anna stirred, reaching automatically for him. "I'm okay, Daddy," she whispered, stroking his ear. He just knew. Later, when she returned to her drawing, Daniel crouched beside the shepherd, hand on his back. "You see everything, don't you?" Kaiser leaned into his touch, eyes warm, as if to answer, "Always." Outside, his vigilance never wavered. When Anna ran in the yard, he bounded beside her, slowing to her stride. When she knelt to study flowers, he stood close enough to block the breeze. When she sat beneath the oak with her sketchbook, he lay beside her, angled so anyone approaching would face him first. Daniel often watched from the porch, coffee in hand, chest filled with awe. These weren't the dramatic rescues of his police years, but in nudges, stares, and steady weight pressed close, he saw something greater. Faithfulness without audience, protection without reward. One stormy evening, the power flickered out, leaving the house lit by candles. Anna grew tense, knees tucked to her chest, fear stirring old shadows. Before Daniel could comfort her, Kaiser leapt onto the couch, wedging his body against hers until her shoulders relaxed, her head resting on his back. "When he's here, it doesn't feel scary," she whispered. Daniel's eyes burned. Lightning split the sky, thunder rolled deep, but inside there was calm, built not on the absence of storms, but on the presence of a guardian who refused to yield. In that moment, Daniel heard Leah's voice in memory. Real love isn't loud, it's steady. Looking at Kaiser, he saw her truth alive. Every day, the shepherd stitched peace into their lives. Anna laughed more, slept easier, spoke her fears aloud. Daniel, too, breathed freer, letting go of the guilt he had worn like a second skin. Fear hadn't disappeared. Seizures might return, shadows might fall, but they were no longer facing it alone. By mid-April, lilacs budded along the fence. The grass carried warmth, and birdsong replaced silence. One Sunday, Daniel, Anna, and Kaiser walked into the backyard. The sky arched wide, a watercolor wash of blues and golds. Anna darted ahead with her rabbit tucked under her arm, laughter spilling free, Kaiser bounding beside her. Daniel stopped near the oak, letting the moment settle. His gaze traced the two figures who meant more than breath. His chest swelled, too full to contain. Sometimes God doesn't send thunder, he thought. Sometimes he sends love on 4 legs, with fur that catches the light and eyes that see deeper than we do. Kaiser slowed his run to match Anna's strides, angling his body to shield her from uneven ground. She leaned into him instinctively. Trust whole. Sometimes miracles don't look like lightning bolts. They look like a child's hand on a dog's back, or laughter spilling through open windows. They look like a house alive again. Anna turned, cheeks flushed. "Daddy, come on!" Daniel smiled, unguarded, easy, and walked toward her. Kaiser pressed against them both, closing the circle. The 3 stood together beneath the wide sky, framed by greening earth. Anna leaned into Daniel's side, Kaiser anchoring them from the other. For the first time since Leah's passing, Daniel felt wholeness. Fragile, yes. Hard-won, but real. We are not promised a life without storms, he thought, but we are promised love to see us through them. Sometimes that love comes in laughter, or in the steady breath of a shepherd at your feet. The wind stirred, ruffling Anna's hoodie and Kaiser's fur. Daniel tilted his head back, eyes catching the bright sweep of sky. "Thank you," he whispered, to Leah, to God, to the guardian beside him. This time, no fear shadowed the words, only gratitude. A father, a daughter, and a dog beneath the Vermont spring sky. Safe, together, whole. At the end of the day, stories like this remind us of something simple but profound. Our dogs don't just walk beside us. They hold our hearts in ways words can't always capture. A German shepherd's loyalty, or any dog's love, is more than protection. It's presence. It's the steady heartbeat in the silence, the quiet reassurance that we are never truly alone. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt that unspoken bond, you know exactly what I mean. And if you'd like to explore ways to deepen that connection, there's a resource I've found meaningful. I'll leave a link for you. It's nothing formal, just something that might help you and your dog share even more of those quiet, healing moments together. Take it or leave it. No pressure at all. Think of it like a gentle nudge from a friend who cares. Because at the end of the day, the best gift we can give our dogs is our time, our love, and the promise that they are as much a part of our family as anyone else.